Is narcissistic personality disorder man-made? What if the possibility exists NPD is a man-made thing? Well, personally, I don't think that's the case. I think that's highly unlikely. However, I do think it's mostly genetic and therefore something that could be discussed about in terms of evolution. If we assume narcissistic personality disorder is genetic, we can talk evolution. One of the things we need to talk about is something called a negative frequency dependent selection. Now, if you understand how evolution works, you'll understand that it sort of happens by itself. There's no kind of thinker or anything or creator actually required in order for evolution to actually occur. That's not me saying that God doesn't exist. Let's leave that out of this discussion. All we need to talk about is the environment and the way it changes, you know, and whether it sort of raises or lowers the likelihood of species to breed and develop and survive, and the mutations that happen randomly between two individuals when they procreate. In the geno-environmental lottery of life, there can be circumstances where the environment's in a particular state and the mutations that are passed on are actually beneficial to some, but not others. The better the relationship between these random mutations causing characteristics to develop in an individual, the more likely they are to be passed on and therefore propagate and become slowly a different species. If it's genetic, are we saying that people with NPD are a different species? I'll leave that up to you. But anyway, what's a negative frequency dependent selection? Let's get into that. Okay, so it turns out that some genetic traits are more likely to be passed on if they actually become really popular, sort of. Like there's a lot of it. So it increases the likelihood of it staying around and continuing to exist. That would be a positive frequency dependent selection. The negative frequency dependent selection is the opposite. It's where actually, for certain traits to stay around, it's actually beneficial if they are relatively rare. This makes sense, does it not? If NPD was rife, I mean really truthfully rife, say the majority of the people, how long do you think society would actually last? Throughout history, manipulators, connivers, murderers, what happens to them? You know, in political settings particularly, they get killed. What about the more grandiose kinds that become royalty or emperors and overstay their welcome in the throne? It's not dissimilar what happens to them, is it? So, if NPD really is genetic, and it really appears like it is, well, that's what we would see throughout history. We would see that when it became more prevalent, these leaders or these kind of people would be killed off. Just a note, that is what we see. You often get throughout history something like the Dark Ages, don't you? Where there's been some kind of terrible destruction and society's just kind of crumbled. And then there's a period of darkness and chaos, but slowly an emerging rebuilding of society. In those instances, innovation, but above all, leadership is required. The bigger and more affluent the society becomes, the more these positions of leadership are actually coveted. And in climates like these, times like these, positions of power like those, the narcissists and psychopaths, they all emerge, don't they? They make laws which they don't follow, but they impose on everybody else. They impose taxes and all sorts of different things which drain the poor dry. And eventually, there's revolution and/or collapse. My argument, I guess, would be that the society in question has become a breeding ground that allowed for a positive frequency-dependent selection of perhaps NPD and ASPD. The society has slowly become more and more infiltrated by personality disordered individuals which only have their own interests at heart. They have no empathy, no moral compass of any kind, and so they don't care what happens to the people that they're actually supposed to be leading. Now, there are other people in society. It's not all doom and gloom. You have the neurotypical population, the majority, that really, I think, just want to have a quiet life and get on, you know, make a bit of money here and there, go on a few holidays. But then there's another community, the neurodivergent community. ADHDers, autistics, ADHDers, dyslexics, dyscalculists, all of us, which have different brains, just like narcissists and psychopaths, but they're different. They have reduced grey matter. We have hyperconnectivity. They don't feel anything. We feel too much. They don't care about justice. We care deeply about it. Narcissists and psychopaths are rogues. They do not conform, and they want to take over society. ADHDers and autistics and everyone else, none of us are conformists either. People with PDA can be very awkward and obstinate, but they usually come with that strong sense of justice and a very logical reason for why sometimes they don't want to do something. So you've got the Hitlers and the Pol Pots of the world, but you've also got the Isaac Newtons and Albert Einsteins too. Perhaps if we looked at ADHD and autism as well and the others, we would find that neurodivergent people also are governed by, in terms of evolution, a negative frequency dependent selection, because obviously society needs to run, but sometimes what you need is someone who's a real specialist and who has a big heart. So although I'm not a fan really of conspiracy theories, I do like this sort of theory. It's quite fun to think about. The idea that throughout history there's been a pushing and pulling between two communities, as it were, of people spread throughout society that have differing brains to the norm, but it's almost as if they're at the ends of an extreme. This is in no way fact, but, you know, think about it. It's quite intriguing to think of it in that way. I've not done a post about this before. I've just realised this is the first time. Tell me what you think, okay? Are there any autistic, ADHD, ADHD history buffs out there that think about this kind of thing? I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, hope that helps. Bye for now.